Okay, I'll let everyone. Oh, there are two people now. Okay, you can start whenever you like.
Okay. Hi, my name is Heather McCain. My pronouns are they, them, and I am from Live, Educate, Transform Society, which is a nonprofit that is entirely run by disabled and neurodivergent people. And most of us are also 2S LGBTQIA+. I'm a white non-binary person who has blue glasses and a shaved head. I will occasionally be throwing these little, oh, they're like invisible. There we go. These little springs to my cat, or else she sometimes screams during workshops, which is not pleasant. So if you see my arm go up like that, that's what I'm doing. So thank you for being here with us today. And this slide has an image of our logo, which is a light bulb made of speech bubbles. And some of our members think it looks like a hot air balloon, and that's okay too. So this slide has an image of a person who's cupping a rainbow paper heart. And we are told that we have consent over our bodies, but then we are taught we have to control our bodies, minds, and senses, and only meet our needs when given permission or at specific times. In this workshop, you have autonomy over yourself. I trust that you will do what you need for yourself. That may look like watching this from bed or taking breaks, getting up, standing, stretching, throwing springs at your cat, anything that helps you participate. I value your participation, and I thank you for being with us today. Live, Educate, Transform Society is committed to creating safer spaces for people who come from equity denied populations. It's also important to us to create safer and braver spaces for people who are just beginning to learn about people who are from those equity denied groups. We appreciate that it can be scary to step into a space if you have little or no or limited experience. So thank you for making that step today. Within this space, we let people participate from their level, whatever that may be. We understand that not everyone has current terminology, and so please use the language that you do have, and we can update any language that needs to be updated. You can ask questions by raising your hand or unmuting. You can also private message me a question if you don't want the group to see it, or you can email me after, and I'm happy to answer any questions. The issues that affect people of all genders and sexualities, issues we will explore today, are all part of the multiple systems of oppression that include colonialization. This slide has an image of sunlight filtering through trees at Seymour Provincial Park. My office is on the stolen land of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples today. And this acknowledgement is a tiny piece in the larger context of the ongoing work that must be done in order to create true, disruptive, palpable change. Colonization has affected how we perceive gender. Individuals were severely punished for experiencing any gender or gender expression outside of the accepted norms of two genders and sexes. In the middle of the 20th century, there was a pushback about this. We are now relearning about cultures around the world that had, and some still have, genders that are outside the binary of male and female. And this slide has an image of an Indigenous person watching a sunset. Many people new to gender and sexuality think that expanded gender terms and expression is recent, but it is not. Cultures around the world have had them for centuries. We are now in a time when more people are being open to the possibilities that our world, our identities, do not fit neatly into constricted boxes, but rather that gender and sexuality are on a broad and wonderful spectrum. Spectrum means that the experience of identifying within that label is individual and varies from person to person and culture to culture. It is vital to acknowledge, honor, be open to, and learn from cultures around the world who have expanded definitions of what gender means. So in the southern state of Oaxaca, Mexico, there are 3 genders: female, male, and Muxai. Muxai have been celebrated and acknowledged since pre-Hispanic times. Muxai are a respected and important part of the community. The Hijra, India's transgender and non-binary individuals, have been around for thousands of years. This slide has an illustration of a Hijra person in a red sari. The Kama Sutra even included references to people with a third nature, which has been interpreted as gender fluidity. After advocates fought for years, in 2014, the Hijra were granted legal recognition with the official designation of a third gender on official documents. Hinalei Mo'ana Wongkalua, also known as Kumahina, meaning teacher in Hawaiian, is an activist, cultural practitioner, and community leader who is working to preserve and pass on Indigenous culture to younger generations. She teaches Native Hawaiian philosophy and traditions while promoting cross-cultural alliances throughout the Pacific Islands. Described as a powerful performer with a clear and strong voice, she has been hailed as a cultural icon and is a prominent leader in the community. Kumahina is a mahu, a Hawaiian term for those who are born in the middle, who embody both the Kane, male, and the Wahani, female spirit, somewhat akin to what Western society would understand as transgender. Kumahina says prior to Western contact, Hawaiian society embraced mahu as caretakers, healers, and teachers of ancient tradition, but colonialization and Christianity led to many changes, including turning mahu from an honorific to a derogatory term. I'm fortunate to now be in a position where I can help restore mahu to its proper place as a word of pride, dignity, and respect. There's a documentary entitled Kumahina that was made about Hina's struggle to maintain Pacific Islander culture and values within the westernized society of modern-day Hawaii. The term mahu describes a person who embodies duality of spirit, both male and female elements within the mind, heart, and spirit, resulting in a different level of balance. Pre-Western contact, Kanaka lived in aloha in harmony with the land and one another. Traditionally, mahu were accepted, respected, and honored in Native Hawaiian culture and were not the cause of dissension, disparity, and negative discourse. Wongkalua says the mahu are 4 healers of dual male and female spirit. They brought the healing arts from Tahiti to Hawaii long ago and used their spiritual power to treat illness and disease. And this slide has a photograph of Kumahina. But when Christian missionaries arrived in Hawaii in the early 19th century, they were shocked by the commonplace of mahu and denounced them as evil. They colonized the Kanaka and taught the mahu people were immoral and sinners. Ultimately, missionary colonizers silenced oral histories about the mahu, along with many other elements of Kanaka life, and the word mahu devolved into an insult. Wongkalua believes film and digital media have the potential to reclaim and decolonize these oral stories. Over the years, she has used these mediums to revitalize traditional stories about the mahu and reach a wider audience. It's important that we recognize that one of the damaging parts of colonialization was that Two-Spirit people were singled out for attempted erasure, violence, abuse, criticization, and condemnation. Two-Spirit traditions and practices were forced to go underground, and in some bands disappeared altogether. Today, Two-Spirit people are reviving their role and traditions, and it's crucial to highlight their history. It's also crucial to hear directly from Indigenous people. So in this video, Tai Daifo, an artist, activist, writer, and traditional Native American hoop dancer who identifies as Two-Spirit, describes what it means to identify as Two-Spirit. Through Ty's writing, activism, and performance, he aims to bring awareness to what Two-Spirit is and how it has been a part of Native American culture for generations.
As a Two-Spirit person, some folks might identify me as being transgender, going from one gender to the next, but I never left the person that I was, even though my appearance may have changed. I'm all those things and then some. So I grew up in the Great Lakes of northern Wisconsin. Every weekend we would go to different powwows, we'd go to different ceremonies. This is where I got to learn about my identity and who I was becoming and am today. So in the Anishinaabe language, we refer to Two-Spirit as Nishmanituwag. It's the idea about transcending gender. Gender is a construct that was placed on Indigenous people to operate in. And so this gives some flexibility, some nimbleness of not having to identify by a type of expression that's placed on something. What's different from the LGBTQ plus is that these are awesome acronyms that sort of kaleidoscope together to create an individual and their identity based on folks that have fought for various rights in the United States, but Two-Spirit or Indigenous queerness. It's something that has always just been a part of our language, always been a part of our culture, and has always been part of that great hooper, that great circle of life. You know, I talk often about this great circle of life or this great hoop. When I was a quite young person, was given a red willow hoop that was very light, and then I was also given a iron hoop at the same time, and was told to learn to dance with both of these hoops. And in that way, I was learning the idea about what balance is. That hoop or that circle of life, we refer to it as being the most inclusive design or shape that we can learn from. You know, right now we are marching and rallying for Black Lives Matter. People were brought here and enslaved on stolen lands. So there's a lot of healing that needs to be done. There's a lot of cross dialogue between cultures and people that needs to be done because of this. A teacher of mine said that if you are not dreaming 7 generations ahead, you aren't dreaming big enough. Every day I wake up and okay, how am I going to change the world today and amplify Two-Spirit, Indigenous queer individuals? I feel like it really happens to being a human that is given the opportunity to evolve into infinite possibilities. As a Two-Spirit.
Social categorization is done in conscious and unconscious ways. This slide has an image of a person sitting cross-legged, sorting shapes coming out of the top of their head into drawers marked with square, circle, star, triangle. It is the natural process by which humans place people into social categories. This process is done to simplify the world and make it feel safer by being able to place people in their boxes. It reduces the chaos of the world. It helps us feel like we understand the people we are interacting with. However, it has the potential to restrict people into boxes that they don't belong in or fit. It can create misperceptions, reinforce harmful stereotypes, and alter interactions. When it comes to different identities, such as gender, sexuality, disability, some have a limited understanding of the broad spectrum of people within those categories, and that lack of knowledge may restrict a person's ability to accurately categorize a person. We perceive a person's gender based on brief visual evaluation of their appearance and social cues. However, we are not always able to identify a person's gender and or sexuality just by looking at them. Here's an interesting TikTok about gender norms and how they are socially constructed. And this is a TikTok by Idea Soup.
About history is that you realize that we're just making everything up. Take gender norms, for example. Guess who this is? Franklin Delano Roosevelt in a beautiful white dress. And this is Hemingway. You want to know why? Because up until the early 1900s, it was absolutely standard to put young boys in dresses until they're about 7 years old. Up until the 1940s, boys wore pink and girls wore blue. A magazine article from 1918 says that this is because pink is a stronger and more decided color. High heels were originally a men's shoe. Here's my boy Louis XIV with his red bottom shoes on. Only nobles that Louis favored were allowed to wear red heels, which may or may not be where the brand Louboutin got its influence from. And for all these things, one day we just woke up as a society and said, now we're going to do the opposite, because it was all made up. And it still is. Most of human culture is just stuff we make up.
So we're going to go over the terminology of 2S LGBTQIA+. The set of initials has expanded and will probably continue to expand to better represent the diverse spectrum of gender and sexuality. The initials can be confusing and or frustrating to some. An alternative that I suggest is to say rainbow alphabet. In my experience, everyone knows what this refers to and no one is offended by its use. While I do suggest it as an alternative, it is important to understand what the current initials stand for. This slide has an illustration of a cat with purple, green, and orange glasses who's doing its own research on its computer. As we go through the next section, please keep in mind that labels aren't for everyone. Some people don't feel that they are required or necessary. Others can be fluid, flexible, unsure, uninterested, or overwhelmed. Some discover and become comfortable with labels over many years. It may be more of a long-term journey than a sudden realization. It is good to know what current language and labels are, but there should be no expectation that everyone has to use them. This slide has 4 balloons that are heart-shaped. I often hear people say, why do we even need labels? Unfortunately, we live in a world where people feel isolated and as if they might be the only person to experience something. So for example, I am asexual and aromantic. I have never been in a relationship. I have never had sex. I knew this was true for myself, but I had no representation of other people until the term asexual was created. Suddenly, I found other people who shared similar experiences. I felt less alone. Labels matter to some people. They help people find their place in the world, find others, find support, better understand themselves and others. However, no person is just one label. My being asexual and aromantic is just one component of who I am, just as I don't want people, or I should never be judged based solely on one identity, just as I don't want people judging me solely on being disabled or neurodivergent. Labels can help us know ourselves and others, but we don't have to be hyper-focused on them. The real importance is in accepting the person, whatever their experience or identity is. And for some, their labels really matter, and it is important that those in their support system understand and honor that. And this slide has an image of rainbow-colored lips. This is a post by Butler Atwood, and it says, I'm about to cry. My 60-year-old mother watched a Netflix documentary and only just now found out she's asexual. I've been trying to figure out how to bring up this idea to her for years. I am so glad to hear her. She's so happy and saying there really is nothing wrong with me. I didn't realize it wore on her like that. God bless the internet. This slide shows an image of a turtle hiding in a shell. Its body is in pride colors. Its shell is dark gray. The text says, it's okay if you're not ready yet. Never feel like you have to figure out this all out now or that you have to disclose your identity before you are ready. So two-spirit is an indigenous term to describe sexual, gender, and or spiritual identity. Traditionally, for centuries, indigenous two-spirit people have been a distinct and alternative gender status. The term is individual to the person and what it means to them. There is no one definition. The term two-spirit is a pan-indigenous term that was created in 1990 at the 3rd Annual Intertribal Native American First Nations Gay and Lesbian American Conference near Winnipeg. Indigenous activists and elders coined the term as an act of self-determination and respect of the historic and ongoing roles of gender-diverse Indigenous people, emphasizing the spiritual knowledge, tradition, and community leadership roles. Two-Spirit is a shared identity across many nations, one rooted in traditional roles, histories, and spiritual understandings that differ from Western gender and sexuality categories. Prior to colonialization, many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis societies recognized and respected Indigenous individuals who embodied diverse gender identities and spiritual roles, often assigning them important ceremonial, healing, and mediation responsibilities. Examples include the Lakota Winktai, which is an individual, typically assigned male at birth, who fulfills a gender role distinct from both men and women, often recognized in their nation as having unique spiritual and societal responsibilities. And the Ojibwe term, Agokwe, describes individuals assigned male at birth who embraced women's responsibilities and ceremonies, often viewed as medicine people or keepers of certain traditions. Colonization attempted to destroy the cultural connection of Two-Spirit people, inserting Western patriarchal ideas about gender. Fortunately, today, Two-Spirit people are reviving their roles and traditions while growing in size and visibility, with dedicated organizations, gatherings, and increased visibility. Two-Spirit people today are at the forefront of reclaiming Indigenous knowledge, fostering healing, and challenging colonial systems, while educating all about the long-standing and ongoing presence of diverse gender and sexual identities within the Indigenous nations. So a note that the term is not to be used by non-Indigenous people, and a note that the term is not used by all Indigenous people who are sexually and gender diverse. So it's important to ask people what terms they use for themselves and respect that. Lesbian is a woman who is romantically, sexually, and/or emotionally attracted to another woman. The term originates from the name of a Greek island of Lesbos, which was home to Sappho, a poet, teacher, and a woman who loved other women. There is an image of a person holding a pride flag looking back at the viewers, sunglasses on their head. Gay is a person who is sexually, romantically, and/or emotionally attracted to the same gender as themselves. This is most often used in reference to men who are attracted to men. And this slide has an illustration of two guys wearing pride attire, their arms around each other. And gay relationships have a long history. Some rights that have been recently won actually existed already in history. An example is men marrying men and having access to partner benefits when they die. So here's a really interesting history from at Rainbow History class.
You know, if they wanted to make Pirates of the Caribbean more realistic, it would have been much gayer. Pirate ships and homosexuality actually have a long-standing relationship. I'll explain. Let's go back to the late 17th century, the golden age of piracy. Life on a pirate ship was nothing like society at the time. Pirates were an all-male crew, so to reduce tensions on board, men would enter same-sex relationships with each other. These relationships weren't a secret or merely tolerated, but encouraged and formalized in a kind of civil union called a matelotage. Matelots, which roughly translates to bunkmates, would do everything together, always embracing each other before going into combat, fighting side by side, and even toasting their lives together with seawater. Matelotage was also quite progressive, as if one matelot died, their possessions would automatically go to the other. Rights that society has taken years to grant to our community. Pirate ships even had forms of insurance where buccaneers were given pieces of aid when they were injured in battle. So while life at sea wasn't easy, if you were a queer buccaneer, it was gold.
So it's a fun little history lesson.
You know, if they want...
Bisexual, bi means two or more. So bisexuals experience sexual, romantic, and/or emotional attractions to people of more than one gender, or are people who are attracted to their own gender and genders different to their own. Bisexuality is a diverse sexual orientation because those in the bi community define it differently. Some identify as bisexual, others as pansexual, queer, fluid, and/or other terms. Bisexuals experience double discrimination, prejudice from heterosexuals, and within the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. Many bisexuals do not feel accepted or recognized in any space. The prejudices stem from stereotypes, negative attitudes, and ongoing bias. The following are some comments that our bisexual members have heard from others. Bisexuals are just going through a phase. People come out as bisexual to soften the blow of coming out as gay or lesbian. You're either straight, gay, or lesbian. There are no other options. You have to pick a side. Bisexual, you are greedy. You're just confused. These incorrect statements significantly impact the mental health, self-worth, and self-esteem of bisexual people. Bisexuality is a legitimate sexual orientation. In addition to anti-bisexual bias, there is also bi erasure, defined as ignoring, removing, or falsifying bisexuality. This occurs in a variety of ways, including within our school systems, academia, media, history, and social interactions. Bi erasure is people claiming that bisexuality doesn't exist, that bi folks are confused or in denial. It's stereotyping bisexual people as indecisive or hypersexual, which leads to experiences and identities being dismissed and not understood. Bisexuality is underrepresented and misrepresented in media, contributing to biases. Bisexual people often feel invalidated and marginalized, both in queer community and the broader community. Bi erasure can have significant negative effects on the well-being of bisexual people. This shows itself in bisexuals having higher rates of mental health issues, increased risk of substance use issues, often linked to the stress and stigma of anti-bi bias and erasure of their identities. Additionally, bisexual people report feeling less supported, thus leading to feelings of isolation. Increasing awareness and visibility of bisexuality is crucial in combating biases, stereotypes, misinformation, and erasure, and fostering a more equitable and accepting society. You can do your part by educating yourself and others about bisexuality and the challenges these individuals experience. You can also support and amplify accurate media representation, speak up when you hear bi stereotypes and misperceptions, correct people who make derogatory comments, and or if you don't feel safe doing that, support the bisexual person who has been impacted, and validate bisexual people, experiences, and identities. Transgender is an umbrella term for a person whose gender identity and/or expression is different to that which was assigned them at birth, and those who do not conform to gender stereotypes. Trans means on the other side of. It is used as a shortened version of transgender. This slide has an illustration of arms raised, each in trans colors, blue, white, and pink, holding a trans sign and flag, and one with a heart above the hand. Queer is an umbrella term to refer to all 2S LGBTQIA+ people. It is a word that was once derogatory, but has now been reclaimed by the community who it was once weaponized against. Now many proudly use it. This slide has an illustration of a flower. Each petal is a different color. Not every queer person is comfortable with using it or being labeled with it, particularly older folks who experienced it as a derogatory term. It is important to respect this. The word can also be used in regard to sexual orientation and/or gender being fluid, such as the term gender queer. If you are not queer yourself, I do not suggest you use the term unless you specifically know that person uses it as an identifier. Intersex is a term for variations in natural biological sex characteristics, chromosomal patterns, hormonal levels, genetic makeup, reproductive and/or sexual anatomy. Some people may go their entire lives not knowing that they are intersex. Other intersex individuals have non-consensual, oppressive, and unnecessary surgical and medical decisions forced on them by medical professions, although there has been a lot of work to move away from these practices, including legislation. Intersex is a societally constructed category that reflects real biological variations. These variations have always existed, but social and medical judgments have labeled them. Kathy Baldock is a intersex advocate, and she says, because there is no way to know the gender of an intersex baby, experts recommend that intersex children be allowed to manifest their natural innate gender, which may be witnessed as early as 2 years of age, usually by age 3 and almost universally by age 6. Not identifying a gender in an intersex baby may be socially difficult for parents, causing them uneasiness or even hostility on the part of others, but it can save the intersex person from a life of frustration and mental and emotional anguish. So an example of this is that my grandmother's best friend had a child who was intersex, and the hospital would not let the parents take the child out unless they made a decision on which gender the child was going to be. And these parents had no information to go off of. This was all a surprise to them. And so they were forced into making a decision. And unfortunately, the decision that they made was incorrect. And their child didn't want the parents to know that they had made the incorrect decision. And so the child lived their life until the parents' death as the gender that they knew they weren't, but that their parents had assigned them. And then once the parents passed away, they were able to get some care so that they could live the rest of their life as the gender that they actually were. And so this is what advocates are trying to work against, is the forcing of people to make these decisions until the child themselves is able to communicate what gender they are. A stands for multiple things. Agender, who are people that do not identify as having a gender. Some see themselves as gender neutral, others see themselves as genderless. Asexual is a person who experiences little or no attraction for others, and this is experienced on a spectrum. Aromantic, a person who experiences little to no romantic attraction, and again, this is also on a spectrum. People may experience no attraction, one attraction, or multiple attractions. This slide has two photos, one of a person leaning back against another, arms wrapped around them, and the second photo shows two happy people smiling in the ocean behind them. There is platonic attraction, the desire for friendship, aesthetic attraction, finding a certain person's appearance attractive, romantic attraction, the desire for romance, sensual attraction, the desire for sensual contact, like hugging, cuddling, and kissing, and sexual attraction, which may or may not be attached to sensual attraction. People experiencing varying combinations of attractions. Some people, like myself, may have attractions like aesthetic attraction, but have no interest or desire in it turning into romantic, sexual, or sensual. Many aromantics and asexuals are told that aromanticism and asexuality is not real, that it needs to be fixed, that it is to be pitied, that it means the person is broken, that it is just temporary, or that they just need to meet the right person. We need to do what we can to amplify their experiences so others understand that these are valid identities. And this slide has two illustrations of people amplifying through bullhorns. The plus covers all of the other non-conforming genders and sexual orientations. It can also include people who are questioning or exploring their sexual and romantic attractions, as well as allies. So for example, audi-gender is when a person's experiences and or perception of their gender is influenced by their autism. Neuroqueer is when somebody is queer and neurodivergent. Polyamorous or polyam is a term for people who have more than one consensual relationship, whether romantic, emotional, and or sexual. It involves multiple partners, and it is also known as ethically non-monogamous. Pan means all, so individuals who are pansexual are romantically, sexually, and or emotionally attracted to others regardless of gender identity. Apologies, just 1 second. My computer has. Yeah. It's important to note that both Canada and the US are experiencing an escalating pattern of legislative and social backlash targeting 2S LGBTQI+ rights, safety, and public presence. Recent years have seen increasing instances of governments and political groups proposing and enacting laws to restrict access to gender-affirming healthcare, suppress equitable education, and limit freedom of expression for queer and trans people. Simultaneously, public discourse and online platforms have amplified anti-2S LGBTQI+ rhetoric, leading to measurable increases in hate crimes, harassment, and mental health crises among community members. In Canada, some provincial leaders have attempted to ban or restrict life-saving healthcare for trans people, while federal funding cuts risk reducing supports that 2S LGBTQI+ organizations rely on for harm reduction, health, and advocacy work. In the US, dozens of states have passed or proposed laws that dismantle existing protections, attack healthcare and sports participation for trans youth, and permit open discrimination that is emboldened by national political campaigns that seek to erase trans and queer identities from public life. And this slide has an image of 2 people who are kissing behind a cardboard sign that says "Fighting for Equality." Organizations and activists warn that these coordinated attacks rooted in misinformation and fear-mongering are designed to strip away basic human rights won through decades of hard-won struggle and to push 2S LGBTQI+ communities back into invisibility and vulnerability. Despite these threats, 2S LGBT people and allies are actively resisting, organizing, and advocating to defend and advance human rights, countering attempts at erasure with solidarity, community building, and public education. Progress for 2S LGBTQI+ rights is only sustainable when communities coordinate to create and demonstrate support, solidarity, upraised voices, and collective action. It is essential if we are to uphold the advances made for 2S LGBTQI+ rights and ensure that people remain safe, seen, and empowered in every community. We need every ally and advocate to join us in opposing the spread of harmful misinformation, bigotry, discriminatory laws, and regressive setbacks. And this slide has an illustration in the color of trans flags, which are pink, white, and blue. And it shows 3 people who are holding signs. One says love, one says pride, one says stop hating. In Canada, several provinces have implemented or proposed measures that restrict 2S LGBTQI+ rights and services, especially affecting trans and gender diverse people in schools, healthcare, and public life. These include policies requiring parental consent for students' chosen names and pronouns, attempts to limit access to gender-affirming care, and targeted hate campaigns. Between 2016 and 2023, there's been a 388% rise in police-reported hate crimes related to sexual orientation, with trans and queer people facing increased online and in-person harassment. Planned federal funding cuts threaten frontline services and support systems for 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals, leaving organizations struggling to sustain essential programs. Moreover, anti-2S LGBTQIA+ rhetoric from political leaders has emboldened hate crimes, discriminatory bylaws, and misinformation, which further jeopardizes the safety and equality of marginalized communities. Travers, who is a transgender professor at Simon Fraser University, says, "I know that many Canadians feel a little bit smug in comparison with the conservative attitudes, the racism, the anti-trans hate campaign in the United States, but we're certainly not immune in Canada. I'm particularly concerned because some of the advances that we've made in Canada in the past decade to support trans people of all ages were very, very difficult to accomplish and completely inadequate." Across the US, dozens of states have enacted or advanced anti-LGBTQ legislation, restricting gender-affirming healthcare for youth, limiting trans participation in sports, and censoring equitable curriculum. Project 2025, a far-right policy blueprint with the backing of influential organizations, calls for an aggressive dismantling of existing LGBTQ rights at the federal level. Its proposals include erasing LGBTQ inclusive language from federal programs, restricting legal protections for LGBTQ people in workplaces, healthcare, and schools, and enabling discrimination under the guise of religious freedom. Arya Sadid, a San Francisco advocate who helped create the country's first ever transcultural district, said to journalist Sam Levins, "We've done so much work to prove our humanity to the rest of the world. The policies and laws are in place, but that doesn't mean the social attitudes are. Trans people are literally living at the will of other people's opinions." He added, "I know who I am. I know that I deserve to breathe and that I deserve to exist." Despite ongoing advocacy and some legal protections, both Canada and the US face a coordinated backlash that attempts to reverse hard-won advances for 2S LGBTQIA+ people. These attacks, fueled by misinformation, political opportunism, and online hate, require solidarity, public education, and sustained legal and political action to defend human rights and prevent further erasure. And this slide has an image of 3 protesters against queer people and 1 person who's proudly holding their pride flag up. Here in BC this month, October, the One BC Party, which is comprised of 3 former BC Conservative MLAs, put forward a private member's bill aimed at dramatically restricting trans rights in the province. The bill proposed several sweeping measures, including prohibiting doctors from providing puberty blockers or gender-affirming care to minors, banning the use of public funds for gender transition treatments, preventing the use of chosen names and pronouns or wrong pronouns in schools, as they said, allowing parents and children to sue doctors for up to 25 years after gender transition treatments, including compensation for the loss of the right to have children. The bill was strongly backed by the One BC Party's Tara Armstrong and Dallas Brody, who characterized gender-affirming care as a medical scandal. The bill did not proceed, as the BC legislature defeated it 48-40 before it ever reached its first reading, a rare move that signals the bill's lack of support and the province's general commitment to trans rights. However, the incident highlights the ongoing anti-trans rhetoric and policy attempts by small but vocal political groups in BC, reflecting wider trends of backlash seen elsewhere in North America. Anna Murphy, who is a trans woman and LGBT activist in Calgary, said, "I'm heartbroken because I recognize what seeing that message, or seeing that narrative does to those kids who are literally, honestly, just trying to go out there and be welcomed and safe and affirmed in the world. We're exhausted from constantly having to debate our existence. We're exhausted by constantly having to self-advocate in the face of ignorance. In their article, Trump Cannot Stop Trans Joy, author Jay Robertson writes, to remain a true ally to the trans community, it's important to remain committed to staying informed and protecting us. Say our names, use our pronouns, and use your power as a cisgender person to remind others that the trans community is not going away just because our government says so. And this slide has a photo of a person who's at a pride parade with a sign that says trans and proud. Robertson continues, have uncomfortable conversations, correct someone who is misgendering a friend, avoid the companies that do not prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, read a book written by a trans person, check in on your trans friends because we truly need it in a time like this. And this slide has an illustration of a trans pride flag. More importantly, for my trans friends, use this time to build and connect with your community. We are invisible to the government, but we all see one another. As long as we exist, they cannot take away our voices and experience if we do not give them that power. And this slide has an illustration of a person's hand with rainbow painted fingernails holding a trans peace sign. And I wanted to end today's workshop on these two quotes. Be aware that empowering people to be who they truly are creates stronger communities. And this is by Leanne Bettasamose Simpson. Also, Audre Lorde says, it is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So please do what you can to recognize, accept, and celebrate the many wonderful ways that we are different. Thank you for being with us here today. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they would like to share? All right. Well, thank you for being here. If you have any questions, sometimes you need information to kind of percolate. I'm happy to answer any questions. What's the next topic? That is a good question. The next topic is going to be imposter syndrome. Oh, yeah. Imposter syndrome. And can you provide the date of that one? Let's see. The next one is on November 18th. Allison says, thank you for this. I needed this today. Well, thank you, Allison. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for being with us today.
Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. See you guys in 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.